The US has reported 150,000 new coronavirus cases, the highest daily figure yet. One of Joe Biden's coronavirus task force members told the BBC that there was a raging fire across the nation. The US president-elect is to start receiving national security briefings next week, according to his transition team. It comes as US election authorities say that this month's vote was the most secure in American history. Thousands of refugees have crossed into Sudan from Ethiopia to escape fighting between Ethiopian federal troops and forces in the country's Tigray province. The UN has called for an investigation into potential war crimes after reports of a massacre. And France has been remembering the 130 people killed in coordinated Islamist attacks on Paris 5 years ago.
Some Chinese stocks, including shares of major telecom companies, fell sharply Friday. This after President Trump signed an executive order barring Americans from investing in 31 Chinese companies said to be providing support to the country's military. The order goes into effect in January. Beijing called the measures malicious, abusive, and unreasonable. China has now congratulated President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, one of the last major countries to do so. A foreign ministry spokesman said Friday that China respects the choice of the American people and noted that the result will be determined according to U.S. law. China, along with Russia, Mexico, and others, didn't join the many leaders who congratulated Biden last weekend. In the U.S., new COVID-19 cases topped 150,000 for the first time yesterday. Several states, including Maryland, Minnesota, and Ohio, have tightened restrictions on daily activities as infections and hospitalizations continue to hit new highs across the country. Speaking on a panel with other central bankers, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said rising coronavirus infections could weaken the economic recovery, and that it is too soon to know how some promising recent progress in vaccine development will influence the economy.
After days of silence, China has become one of the last major countries to congratulate U.S. President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris.
We respect the choice of the American people. We extend congratulations to Mr. Biden and Ms. Harris. Meanwhile, we understand the results of the U.S. election will be determined according to U.S. laws and procedures.
China's government had previously sidestepped the question of officially acknowledging Biden's victory, as President Donald Trump has not yet conceded, alleging election irregularities. Adding to the mounting pressure on Trump to concede defeat in the election is another projected state win for Biden. And former government officials are also joining calls for a smooth transfer of power. ABC News projected on Thursday that Biden has secured victory in the western state of Arizona. The win in a state that's been Republican-led since 1952, excepting Bill Clinton in 1996, gives Biden 11 more electoral seats. His total is now 290, well over the 270-seat threshold needed to secure the presidency. Trump has won 217 electors. The political website Politico reported on Thursday that former high-ranking national security and diplomatic officials, including former Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel and former CIA Chief Michael Hayden, sent a letter to the General Services Administration. It's responsible in providing financial support and assistance to the president-elect's transition team, but is so far yet to do so for Biden. The letter warns that a delay in the transfer of power could pose a serious risk to national security, particularly during the pandemic. Meanwhile, Trump has continued to claim that there was massive election fraud without showing any evidence. Officials from multiple government organizations issued a joint statement on Thursday. It said they have the utmost confidence in the security and integrity of our elections, and you should too. Moving to Japan, where nearly 1,700 new coronavirus cases were reported on Friday, surpassing the record set a day earlier. The Prime Minister is calling for renewed vigilance. Health authorities across the country reported 1,695 new cases on Friday. Experts say Japan is in the third wave of the outbreak. In total, over 116,000 infections have been confirmed, and nearly 1,900 people have died. The biggest hotspot remains the capital, Tokyo, where cases exceeded the 300 mark for the third consecutive day. Medical workers are concerned about the rising number of patients. At this Tokyo hospital accepting the seriously ill, doctors say they're running out of beds.
It may be necessary to increase the number of beds, as they have been almost full since last week.
Another hotspot is the northernmost prefecture of Hokkaido, where more than 200 new cases were reported on Friday. Multiple clusters have been detected in a nightlife district in Sapporo. Authorities are asking restaurants and bars there to shorten their business hours.
The situation is still very severe as we try to strike a balance between social and economic activities and the prevention of the spread of infection.
But that's a tough order for many businesses. The manager of this bowling alley says the number of customers on weekdays has plunged to just 10% of that before the pandemic.
Once some parts of the economy grind to a halt, it will surely affect all businesses. We need support and a safety net from the authorities.
Meanwhile, officials disclosed on Friday that more than 130 people who participated in the government's domestic travel campaign had tested positive for the virus. It's raising questions for the government over whether they'll continue the subsidy program meant to promote the hard-hit tourism industry.
I acknowledge that experts also have the view that there is no need to declare a state of emergency or review the travel campaign at the moment.
Suga urged people to take basic anti-infection measures, especially in risky situations, including group meals and having conversations without a face mask. Japan's National Institute for Defense Studies says China has established a strategy that fuses military and civilian efforts. The report says the country is rapidly developing core technologies to boost its capabilities in cyberspace and outer space. It notes China recognizes the key to getting the upper hand on the U.S. military is to strengthen cooperation between the military and private businesses. One facet of this is simplifying regulations to make it easier for firms to enter the security sector. The nation is pushing cutting-edge technologies like robots and next-generation information technology as strategically important. According to the paper, Europe and the United States are concerned about China acquiring overseas technologies through investment and exchange with foreign countries. Turning to Hong Kong, where opposition politicians fear recent moves by China may put an end to the pro-democracy movement. They say the new national security law has led to a crackdown that dampens their voice in the legislature and on the streets. Fergus Leung is a district council member, but he was disqualified from running in September's legislative council election, which the government said it had to postpone because of the coronavirus.
The fight at the Legislative Council is over. It's also difficult to appeal to the international community under the national security law. Rallies have been sluggish as well. We want to find a way to continue protesting.
Leung's comments refer to Beijing giving Hong Kong authority to disqualify legislators deemed a threat to national security. 4 opposition politicians were subsequently removed from the territory's legislative council. To protest the move, 15 pro-democracy lawmakers tendered their resignations on Thursday. The Democratic Party chairperson said all power now rests with Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam, who was appointed by Beijing. Rescue efforts are underway for dozens of missing people in the Philippines after a typhoon killed at least 39 people and caused extensive damage. Typhoon Bamko tore through Luzon Island from Wednesday to Thursday, bringing heavy rain and strong winds. It caused floods and mudslides in the capital of Manila and its surrounding areas. Tens of thousands of homes have flooded. Local authorities are racing to rescue survivors and grasp the extent of the damage as the country is reeling from 8 typhoons in the past 2 months.
It reached our first floor, almost the second floor. All the houses here were submerged in mud and in water.
President Rodrigo Duterte promised on Thursday that the government will provide affected residents with shelter and relief. Vamco is now approaching Vietnam, where flooding caused extensive damage just last month. Former Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad has hinted that he may lead his country again if the people wish, but only for a very short period. In an exclusive interview, NHK asked Mahathir if he's willing to assume the country's premiership.
Maybe not as prime minister, but of course maybe for a very short period perhaps. Depends upon what people want me to do. I respond to the demands of people.
The 95-year-old statesman had said he would not run in the next general election, citing his age. The current term of parliament ends in 3 years. Mahathir said he'd be 98 years old by then. He added that there were others more capable than him to serve as prime minister. Mahathir said he wants to help his country by using his experience not necessarily as a member of parliament, but perhaps playing a role in the government. Malaysia has been mired in political turmoil since February, when Mahathir resigned as prime minister due to ruling party infighting. Former Interior Minister Muhyiddin Yassin took over in March, but his government has been under pressure from the opposition and other forces for being installed without winning an election. Mahathir was Malaysia's prime minister for 22 years through 2003, turning the country into an industrial powerhouse in Southeast Asia. He came out of retirement to assume the premiership again in 2018 at the age of 92. Japanese Nobel Prize laureate in physics Koshiba Masatoshi died on Thursday at a Tokyo hospital. He was 94. Koshiba co-won the prize in 2002 for his groundbreaking study of neutrinos, subatomic particles that had long fascinated and frustrated scientists. They'd been considered too small to observe until Koshiba successfully constructed a massive underground detector called Kamiokande. It allowed him to observe neutrinos coming from the direction of the sun. Koshiba used his prize money to establish a foundation in Japan to promote research in basic sciences. Among his students was Kajita Takaaki, who went on to win the Nobel Prize in Physics himself in 2015, also in neutrino study. Koshiba's achievement laid the framework in Japan for the extensive study of elementary particles. Flash floods have ravaged the southeastern United States after a tropical storm had dumped record heavy rain. Our meteorologist Sayaka Mori has the details.
Tropical Storm Eta made landfall in Florida. It was the 12th named storm to strike the continental United States this year. It interacted with the cold front and brought heavy rainfall over the Carolinas. Take a look at this footage. Floods in North Carolina have caused disruptions for many commuters as water-blocked roads. About 140 people were rescued by firefighters in Charlotte. The city had 117 millimeters of rain on Thursday, setting a new daily record for the spot. Several people have been killed by flash floods. Now, the system has become a low-pressure system, will continue to stay over the Atlantic, and back behind it, cooler air is coming in, so some snow is possible across the New England states. More frigid air is coming in over the west. We might see over 90 centimeters of snowfall in the Cascades. Winds are going to be pretty strong in the mountains, too. The highs will be in the single digits in Vancouver, only 10 in Seattle, and it's cooling down sharply along the eastern seaboard as well, only 12 in New York, despite sunny weather on your Saturday. We have been monitoring a circulation called Vamco. Vamco has re-intensified to a typhoon over the South China Sea. It is expected to pound Vietnam on Sunday as a severe tropical storm. This area has had copious amounts of heavy rain since the beginning of October. An additional 350 millimeters possible over the central locations. Flooding and landslides will be a very high concern. Da Nang will see stormy weather, especially on your Sunday. Thunderstorms are possible as well. Manila will see a clear sky on Saturday. However, rain should return on Sunday. So